Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1151, June the 4th, 2020, Thursday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so we're going to talk today about the hearings yesterday with Rodenstein. Now, let me just go ahead and issue a profanity alert. Profanity alert. It's very likely, based on the mood I'm in, having just watched the hearings, that there might be some profanity. Now, how bad was it? It was so bad. The Republicans were so feckless, so weak, so incompetent in their questioning of Rodenstein that the very best, toughest, most aggressive question came from Mazie Hirono. Mazie Hirono. I've taken some notes, so let's just go through this because I don't have that much time, and I've took quite a few notes here. So I'm just going to go through these notes and address each one seriatim. Rodenstein made the comment during one of the questions, now I watched all of the Republicans' questions, and I watched most of the Democrats. Not every single one, but most. I'd say I watched about 80% of the total hearings. And I really couldn't take any more. Now, in one of these questions, where Rodenstein's answering a question, he says, and this is toward the end, he says, we need to find out what happened. Did people engage in misconduct? Are there systematic problems? We need to fix them so it won't happen again. We need to solve the problem. Yeah, and I believe it was Josh Hawley. There were two Republicans that did okay, pretty decent. Hawley and Ted Cruz. The rest of them sucked. Literally, the toughest question, and the only question on wearing a wire or the 25th Amendment, came from Mazie Hirono. In my mind, in these hearings, there were really four issues that you had to deal with Rodenstein involving the coup. Number one, wearing the wire. Number two, the 25th Amendment issue that we heard about. The FISA warrants and the appointment of Uncle Bob the executioner. And as you've probably noticed from the hearings, they had very little time. Very little time. Yet most of them began their questioning, wasting most of their time with a soliloquy of the narrative story. We didn't need that. We already know all that. When you've only got a few minutes, which is all they had, you've got your questions lined up, and they are very direct to the point questions. You likely know the answer you're going to get, so you have the follow-up question. And there should have been coordination between the staffs of the Republicans so that they had a strategy for their questioning. It was clear they had none. There was no strategy. And again, Kennedy really disappointed me. He spent more than half of his time, which was very little. They only got to ask one or two questions, because he spent most of the time giving us, again, a replay of the narrative. Well, it sure looks like there was political bias, and the Department of Justice and the FBI are great organizations, and we just need to try. Yes, we know all that! We've been through all that! Ask the fucking questions! Ask the questions! I'm not even a lawyer, and I know better than that. We don't need to be told again the narratives. Ask the damn questions. Good questions that get to the point. You've only got, less than 10 minutes. Yet most of these guys spent the first more than half of their time just telling us the same type of crap we've been hearing for years. Of course we know there was political bias. Of course we know they were violating procedures. Of course we know it was a rigged deal. You don't need to go over that. When it comes your turn, you ask your damn questions, which should have been pre-written. These guys suck. We need to find out what happened. Mr. Rodenstein, we know what happened. First, there was an attempt to keep the president from winning the election. When that didn't work, they had to go for the coup. That's what happened. We know what happened, Rod. We know why it happened. All we want to know is who's going to jail. Mr. Rodenstein? But there's Rodenstein. We need to find out what happened. We already know. Did people engage in misconduct? Of course they engaged in misconduct. It was a freaking coup. Are there systematic problems? Of course there are no systematic problems. You broke the damn rules. We need to fix them. No, we need to throw your asses in jail. So it won't happen again. Of course it'll happen again. It continues to go on. It's never stopped. We need to solve the problem. What problem? A crime is not a problem. There are policies and procedures in place. You didn't follow them. And you broke the law by doing so. You knew exactly what you're doing, Mr. Rodenstein. As I said, Mazie Hirono literally asked the toughest, best question. The only one who even asked about the 25th Amendment and wearing a wire. And Rodenstein again says he never discussed removing President Trump using the 25th Amendment, never discussed wearing a wire. He continues to stick to that. Yet we have Andy McCabe, who wrote a damn memo saying that's exactly what happened. That Rodenstein talked to him about wearing a wire and about the 25th Amendment. Not just once, but he even talked about it in a follow-up meeting. Now, McCabe says that he wasn't too hip to the idea, but the very next day, he opens up an investigation into Trump. But he says, well, yeah, Rod's talking about wearing a wire, the 25th Amendment. I wasn't so sure we wanted to go down that road, but, you know, that's what Rod was talking about. And he was serious, because McCabe's even asked. He's asked in the interview, because not only did he write a memo, he did a TV interview, and he was asked in the interview, was he joking? No, McCabe said, no, he definitely wasn't joking, because we had another meeting right after that, and he came in and talked about it some more. And then we get General Counsel James Baker, who says he was in a meeting with Lisa Page and McCabe where they seriously talked about the comments that Rodenstein made about wearing a wire in the 25th Amendment. There were other people in that meeting as well. We can only hope that Durham is going to be interviewing those people. And if you can get all those people, even though some of them are known liars, and say, yeah, no question, Rodenstein definitely talked about it. And I'm sure that all of these people took down some notes. They probably have notes. Rodenstein's lying. And as far as is Rodenstein flipped? Did he flip and is he working for the Durham investigation? Well, I would say based on what I saw, no. If he had flipped and was working for the Durham investigation, he wouldn't have sat there and lied about all these things. He would have come clean and then said, you know, he would have said it in his opening statement. He would have come out in his opening statement and diffused every single one of the questioners by saying right up front, look, I was involved in some things. Look back on it now. There's a lot of things going on, but I definitely made mistakes. I did some things that were wrong. I may have even did some things that were against the law. But I have decided to fully cooperate with the Durham investigation, doing everything I can to provide as much information as possible so that we can find out exactly who did what. And my only hope is that by coming clean and cooperating, that there'll be leniency against me for the things that I was involved in. That should have been his opening statement if he was a cooperating witness. But he continued to lie throughout this entire thing. That tells me he's not cooperating with the Durham investigation. James Baker testified under oath that Rodenstein did suggest wearing a wire, and he wasn't joking. He also went on TV, just like McCabe, and reiterated that point. It's hard for me to believe Rodenstein. And then, throughout the hearings, you get the impression, it was almost like watching the Jekyll Hyde performance with Rodenstein. At various points, he attempts to throw McCabe and Comey under the bus, but then when he's pushed on the issue, he backs off. He pulls away. Did McCabe lie to you? No. But he wasn't candid. You ever heard of a lie of omission, Mr. Rodenstein? It's still a lie. You've got an investigation into the President of the United States, his national security advisor, his entire team that's been ongoing based on a bunch of garbage. And you're talking to the assistant or deputy FBI director who's the one who launches the investigation into Trump? And he doesn't volunteer information? And you say that's not being candid? No, that's lying. So he tries to throw McCabe and Comey under the bus when he's cornered and has no way out. But once he gets past that and he gets into another line of questioning, it's like Jekyll Hyde. Did you read the FISA? He's asked 3 or 4 different times about reading the FISA. Sometimes he's yes, sometimes it's no. Sometimes, well, I didn't read law. Well, I had a pretty good idea what was in it. But I didn't have to verify it. No, it's not my job to verify it. No. Oh, yeah, I signed off on it that I, under penalty of law, swear that the facts here are true, are legitimate. Signature. But, that doesn't actually mean I actually investigated any of it or asked any questions about it. I just signed off on it. Is that a rubber stamp? Josh Hawley, is that a rubber stamp? No, not a rubber stamp. Well, actually it is. Either you looked into it, you investigated it, you asked some questions. This is not any normal investigation. It's an investigation into the sitting president of the United States, which had been ongoing since he was a candidate, including a member of his team, a national security advisor. Well, let's see here. Yeah, we're going to investigate. Okay, yeah, give me the pen. Go ahead. No way. No way. Rodenstein lied. Rodenstein says he sent a letter to Jeff Sessions to recommend the firing of Comey because of his attempts to get involved in a political campaign. That's what he testified to yesterday. That's what he said. He said he sent a letter to Sessions to recommend the firing of Comey because of his attempts to get involved in a political campaign. When he said that, I said, you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. I remember that letter. I don't remember him saying anything about that. So I went back and Googled it and read the letter again. My friends, I encourage you to Google that for yourself. Type into your search bar, Rodenstein, send letter to Sessions, fire Comey. Type in those search words. You'll pull up the letter that Rodenstein sent to Sessions. Nowhere in that letter does he say a word about Comey being involved in a political campaign or anything like it. The entire letter deals only with Comey's handling of the Hillary Clinton email investigation. That is the only thing that letter deals with. The removal of Comey in Sessions' letter is totally dedicated to Comey's failure of leadership and his mishandling of the Clinton email investigation. Nowhere in that letter does he get anywhere close to suggesting that he recommended Comey be fired for getting involved in a political campaign. Yet he swore under oath yesterday in a hearing when being questioned that he sent a letter to Sessions to recommend the firing of Comey because of his attempts to get involved in a political campaign. I just read the letter. You can go read the letter. You will see he does not say a single word about that. He lied. Rodenstein agreed when being questioned by Lindsey Graham that by August of 2017, there was no evidence that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. No, it was known in January of 2017. Yet he allowed it to go on for another 19 months. 19 months. He's lying here. He says that he agrees that the August of 2017, there was no evidence. August of 2017, no evidence that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. Now, actually, we knew that back in January of 2017, or the FBI certainly did. But yet he lets the investigation go on for another 19 months. And he was never asked a follow-up by Graham. Graham just moves on. This is a cover-up operation, my friends. I certainly hope that Ron Johnson's hearings do not turn out to be like this, because I can tell you right now, just from what I've seen yesterday in the Rodenstein hearing, Lindsey Graham, this hearing is not about getting to the bottom of anything. It's about continuing the cover-up. It's about, well, we've come to the end, we've interviewed all the witnesses, and mistakes were made. I'm going to make some recommendations for what we can do to keep these things from happening in the future. That's going to be where we're going to end up in the Lindsey Graham hearings. I'm telling you that right now. It's the political season and Lindsey Graham's got an election coming up. That's all you need to know. This is for Lindsey Graham is nothing but a political stunt. It's a political stunt. Remember, it was Lindsey Graham who was doggedly pursuing getting the Senate to pass a resolution to protect the Mueller investigation after we had already known that the thing was a fraud. Lindsey Graham's trying to protect the Mueller team after we all know. I'm here doing YouTube videos every day talking about the coup. All the shit's coming out. And there's Lindsey Graham, while they're in the heat of trying to entrap the president to get him impeached or charged with obstruction. And there's Lindsey Graham trying to protect Mueller. Never forget that. Rodenstein said he did not know the FBI field office decided to close the investigation into Flynn on January 4th, 2017. He says he did not know about the exculpatory evidence with Carter Page and Papadopoulos. And he said if he did, he would not have signed the FISA. Are we supposed to believe that Rodenstein, who's in charge of the Mueller investigation, and this is not any ordinary investigation, he's in charge of the investigation, yet he's telling us he's never been made aware of the exculpatory information, of which it was a lot. He was never made aware of all the lies to the FISA court. He was never made aware of the FBI field office on January 4th finding that Flynn was clean. He's not aware of any of this. He's overseen the entire thing, approving of the whole thing, appointing Mueller. And let's not forget, who was Rodenstein working with in transition in the 7 weeks between the time that Comey was fired and that Rodenstein was appointed, that Sessions recused and that Rodenstein's appointed. He was working with Dana Buente. That's who briefed him for 7 weeks as he was waiting to transition into the deputy attorney general position, where he would immediately take over after Buente and all his friends forced Sessions to recuse himself. And you don't think that this was all? there was And you don't think they were talking about that? That there was no communication about that? That this was purely happenstance? You'd have to be a moron to believe that. And you got to be a moron to believe that Rodenstein, well, one of two things, if Rodenstein's telling the truth, and I don't believe he is, he's either totally incompetent or lying his ass off. One of the two. You could not be in his position and have the FBI come to you and want to investigate a sitting president after investigating his entire campaign team during the election season, want to investigate his incoming national security advisor, his family, and everyone else around him, and you're the deputy attorney general, and you just go in charge of the investigation, go, yeah, sounds good to me. No. Anyone in the right mind would say, man, that is... You want to investigate a sitting president, his administration, his national security advisor, his entire family, for being a pawn of the Russians? Have you got any evidence of that? What is your evidence? I need to know a lot more. And you call Comey and McCabe in your office, and you sit down and say, make the case. We've had many prosecutors look at that EC, look at the information from the first 2 FISA warrants, and everyone that's looked at that, even some Democrat who've looked at that, say, man, you couldn't go to a local judge in your hometown and get a warrant based on this. Rodenstein had to be incredibly incompetent, I mean super incompetent, or he's corrupt as hell and he's part of the coup, and I think it's the latter. No way he was this incompetent or out of the loop. He's trying to make it sound like he's out of the loop. He's just sitting there managing this huge Department of Justice. And all this information that's so important in such a critical, major investigation, so politically sensitive of an investigation, and he's not the least bit curious as to what the evidence is. He just signs off on FISA warrants, signs off on investigations, signs off on everything. He's not the least bit curious about what the evidence is to support it. No way. And even Ted Cruz makes this point. He says, Rodenstein, either you are complicit or you are grossly negligent. Exactly right. Complicit or grossly negligent. Either of those two would be sufficient grounds for a civil lawsuit by Carter Page and Papadopoulos. If I were those two, based on Rodenstein's testimony yesterday, I would have my attorneys drawing up the papers to file charges in civil court, to file a case in civil court to sue Rodenstein. Because as Ted Cruz says, the evidence can only point to one of two things. There are no other choices. Rodenstein was either complicit in the crime or he was grossly negligent, either of which resulted in the damages to Mr. Papadopoulos and Page. There was not a single question, and you would expect that Lindsey Graham, of all people, would ask the question about that July 2018 letter from Rodenstein to the FISA court, where he literally writes a letter to the FISA court. A year and 3, 4, 5 months later, after all this information has come out, and they now know for sure about the exculpatory evidence, they know for sure the entire thing was a fraud and a hoax, yet Rodenstein writes this letter to the FISA court to explain what they did, and the FISA court literally turns around and forwards a letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee because they want to make damn sure that there is oversight on that. So here's Rodenstein signing off on this letter to answer for the crimes committed against the FISA court, and he doubles down on all the garbage and lies. He just doubles down on it. It was so egregious that the FISA court forwarded it over to and provided it to the Senate Judiciary Committee with specific instructions. Make sure that in your oversight capacity that you look into this. Yet Lindsey Graham does not bring it up, nor does any other Republican. Probably one of the most damning pieces of information, because this is July of 2018. By that time, they knew everything was a fraud. Then we find out who wrote the scope memo. Well, who wrote the scope memo? Well, the Mueller team wrote the scope memo. They're writing their own scope memos. They're writing their own scope memos. And Rodenstein says, well, yeah, I wasn't dealing directly with the Mueller team. I set up a group of people. I don't know who this group of people was, but we certainly need to get their names. And they were getting the information from Mueller about what they wanted in the scope memo. And then they, Rodenstein's people, dealing with Mueller's people, get that information from Mueller's team. They give it to Rodenstein. He signs off on it. The scope memo. One of those scope memos allowed them to target Michael Flynn's son to go after him, to put pressure on Michael Flynn to turn on Trump. Yet not a single damn question. They never dug into that at all. They don't even talk about the third scope memo or the second. There was 3 total. The Mueller team literally wrote the scope memos. That's why they don't want us to see them. Rodenstein could never give a straight answer on whether or not he read the FISA warrants or not. Did you read it? Well, I was familiar with what was in it. Did you read it? Well, I mean, it was 100 pages. You know, I kind of read through it, and not every page. Did you just rubber stamp it? No, it wasn't a rubber stamp. I mean, well, was or not? I mean, either you read it or you didn't. If you didn't read it, it was a rubber stamp. Well, you know, no, it's not really. I mean, he says, no, he says, my job is to make sure that the processes were followed. Oh, really? Would one of those processes be the Woods file? That wasn't followed. Rosenstein's a liar. And he's not cooperating with the Durham investigation. Not based on the performance he gave yesterday. Then he's asked about the information to launch the investigation, and he gives a similar type of response. Well, it wasn't really the dossier information, and this is something they keep doing. Just because in the information they do not specifically use the words Christopher Steele and dossier, they say, well, it wasn't the Christopher Steele dossier information. Yes, it was! Horowitz told us that! Rosie says, well, there was, the dossier, Christopher Steele, and there was some other information. No, there wasn't. We just got the IG report. It was totally about the information in the dossier, allegedly written by Christopher Steele. But Rodenstein's like, well, yeah, no, it wasn't really, the dossier or Christopher Steele. Yes, it was! That's already been established. These guys want to pretend that the information in the dossier that was the information they used, just because they didn't say this is information from the Christopher Steele dossier, just because it didn't have that in there, but it actually had the information that was the Christopher Steele dossier, that therefore it's not the Christopher Steele dossier information. He's a slippery weasel. A slippery rat. He's asked, do you consider the Mueller investigation to have been corrupt? No. No. He doesn't consider there was any corruption involved in the Mueller investigation. He doesn't even think there was political bias. No, there was no political bias or corruption in the Mueller investigation. No. No. Come on now. Man, this guy. And then, at the end of the hearings, when Graham gives his closing statement, he literally says, yet despite the fact that they've had only, 7 Republicans with about probably less than 10 minutes each, half of which they wasted giving little speeches. And then Graham concludes it by going, well, sounds great, Rod. Thanks for coming in. Quote, I don't think that you were involved in a criminal conspiracy. There you go. Lindsey Graham calls him Rodenstein. They get about a total of maybe an hour and 15 minutes of total question time, most of which is spent on giving, a opening statement, which uses most of the time that should have been used for serious questions. And then the Democrats ask a bunch of questions. And based on that, Lindsey Graham is determined that Rod Rodenstein was not involved in a criminal conspiracy. Yeah, Rod, well, I don't think that, I feel confident you weren't. Thank you for coming in today, by the way. Thank you for gracing us here today by coming in. Thank you so very much, Rod, for coming in. You really are a wonderful servant. Thank you so much for your years at the Department of Justice, for all you've done. Thank you for coming in today and answering all of our questions. Now that we got this all cleared up, I think it's safe to say that I don't believe that you were involved in a criminal conspiracy. That's Lindsey Graham right there in a nutshell. That's all you need to know. That is going to be the final word. He's going to drag this out for a couple of months through the election, get as much face time as he can, and that is the final conclusion Lindsey Graham has already drawn after one witness with minimal question time. He is determined that Rodenstein was not involved in the criminal conspiracy. Thousands of more questions that should have been asked. But he doesn't need to ask him because he's already figured it out. Lindsey Graham's got it all figured out. Rodenstein was not involved in a criminal conspiracy. Thank you very much for playing. They probably paid him for being there. Probably wrote him a big check, which he collected on his way out the door. Rodenstein says, quote, political bias did not enter into the investigation. Political bias did not enter into the investigation. That's strange, because I could swear that Peter's been stroking us and Luce Lisa Page got removed from the Mueller team for things that you would consider to be pretty strong evidence of political bias. And then we don't even get to find out. They don't even notify Congress for 4 months. And only because they had to. The FISA warrant that Rodenstein signed off on, it was found months and months ago by the FISA court to be illegal. I didn't hear a single Republican say, no, Rod. The FISA courts found that FISA warrant that you signed off on was illegal. You know, against the law, a crime, and it's got your signature on it. Now that signature line does not say, I swear under penalty of perjury that underlings below me have gone through the entire thing and have guaranteed me that everything's on the up and up and it's all good. All the information here is all true. That's what the underlings below me have told me. Therefore, I'm signing off on it. That's not what it says. It says that I, Rod Rodenstein, signature line, I, Rod Rodenstein, attest under penalty of perjury that the following information to seek this search warrant is true. That's what it says, essentially, in a nutshell, in general. Not a single question on the leaks. Not a single question. 125 days, the first 125 days of Trump's administration, 126 leaks, including one that was highly illegal. Not a single question about the leaks or investigating the leaks. Again, what did we learn from the Rodenstein hearings? We learned that it's a show. We learned that the conclusion has already been drawn by Lindsey Graham that there was no criminal conspiracy. And that they just need to find out what the shortcomings are in the process. There's obviously problems, or none of this would have happened. If they simply had better guidelines, policies, and procedures, none of this would have happened. It was just a series of mistakes and accidents. A little incompetence here, a little incompetence there. That's really all that happened here. So we're going to make some new policies and it'll all be good. There you go. We can only hope that Ron Johnson's committee is not so pitiful and miserable and such a fail. These guys literally make me sick. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.